We are here for the mitzvah, for the obligation of levaya, of accompanying a body to its final resting place, of accompanying a soul as it begins its journey and return to God, and to accompany these mourners. And before we go further, I just want to note the presence with us today, remotely, of Sheila's daughter Lisa, and of her sister Audrey, and her husband Artie, who are not able to be here in person with us, but who are with us in spirit and very much present along with other family members and friends to be able to share their love and their desire to accompany this family through the valley of the shadow of death. The words from Isaiah chapter 40. Kol omer kra ve'amar ma'ekra, kol abasar chatzir v'chol chasto ketzitz hasadeh, yavish chatzir navel tzitz ki ruach Adonai noshva bo, achen chatzir ha'am, yavish chatzir navel tzitz, udvar Eloheinu yakum le'olam. A voice says, cry out. And I say, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades when a wind of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God shall endure forever. The word of our God shall endure forever. We think we can find the right words today. We think that perhaps we can offer these mourners a measure of comfort by telling them how blessed they are, how fortunate they were, how lucky we are. It's not our place. Not today. Today we are here to be in silence with these mourners and their family, to be guided by their words, by their laughter, by their tears, however they choose to express what they are feeling today. We are simply meant to offer the space, to give room, to let them speak, to be heard. In the days ahead, it will be our time to share with them. But for today, all we can do is turn to the words of our tradition, to hopefully find comfort, to hopefully give voice to the questions we all have about our own mortality, about the life of the soul, about the place we play, the role we play in this world, to make sure that this soul survives with us as a legacy to us all. The words from our tradition, the 23rd Psalm. And I imagine that as I share these words today, I can see Sheila waving her hands, closing her eyes, playing along to the melody, taking in the intentions as much as the meaning, and simply being at peace with the words of our tradition. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, Binot eshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenahaleini. Nafshi yeshovev, nafshi yeshovev, Yanecheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeitz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Tarok lefanai shulchan, tarok lefanai shulchan, tarok lefanai shulchan, neged sorerai, Dishanta Vashemen Roshi, Dishanta Vashemen Roshi, Dishanta Vashemen Roshi, Kosi Revaya. Achtov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai veshavti bevet Adonai veshavti bevet Adonai le'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, guides me on paths of righteousness, restores my soul for the sake of God's glory. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Before this morning's service began, the family members recited the words, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach. The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken. May God's name be blessed for all times. I ask you, God, to please give us the vision to see and feel that embedded deep in each of your gifts is a core of eternity, undiminished and bright, an eternity that survives the dread hours of affliction and misery. Those we have loved, though now beyond our view, have given form and quality to our being. They have led us into this wide universe we continue to inhabit, and their presence is more vital to us than their absence. What thou givest, O Lord, thou takest not away. Bounties once granted shed their radiance for evermore. Let us say Amen. Several family members are going to be sharing their thoughts, their reflections today. Rabbi Drill is going to share first Sheila's daughter Lisa's words, followed by her granddaughter Genevieve's words.
I know that Lisa and David are with us, as Rabbi Chef said, and Lisa, I pray that I do honor to your beautiful words. Everyone always says when a person dies that their life was cut short, that it was too soon, even if they lived a full, fairly long life. Certainly, living to almost 90 counts as a full, long life, but not in this case. Sheila and we, her family, fully expected her to live to be a centenarian. Her grandmother lived to 95, her father to 92, and her mother to just shy of 102. Sheila believed in eating healthy food, never smoking, rarely drinking, and taking lots of supplements. We grew up eating whole wheat bread, tons of fruits and vegetables, and rarely getting dessert. In fact, I learned to bake at a very early age, of course only using unbleached or whole wheat flour and brown sugar or honey, just so we could eat healthy desserts and at least get dessert. So how is it our beloved mother died so young? It isn't right or fair. Of course, COVID and COPD never were supposed to be in the picture, and she is gone much too soon. My mother was an optimist. Some called her Pollyanna-ish, but she tried to look at the glass as half full and find a positive spin on things, even when that was hard to do. She was inspired by my grandmother, Dorothy Bunin, who would live life by the Annie song and stick out my chin and grin and say, "The sun'll come out tomorrow." She had many friends and was supportive and caring to them. She carved out a little time each day to speak with each of us kids. But I had to follow her around and fold laundry or do dishes or other chores while talking, or she would move on to my sisters. Thus, I learned to multitask. When I was 11, my dad lost his job. Mom cried, wondering how she would be able to feed 4 kids and make ends meet. But when the going gets tough, the tough get going. She had a lot on her plate and needed help. And as the oldest girl, I was the chosen helper. Since a penny saved is a penny earned, I learned to clip coupons and base a meal on what was on sale. I became responsible for 3 to 4 dinners a week, packing everyone's lunches and making breakfast for Dad every morning. Since necessity is the mother of invention, I started teaching myself to cook meals from other countries to make things more interesting. I helped Mom stuff envelopes and make phone calls to earn extra money. I didn't realize at the time that this was a life course in time management. Mom didn't complain and expected the same of me, and it made me stronger and independent. Mom encouraged us to get a good education, was always pushing us to read and learn. We would play word games like Jado to teach us reasoning skills and do puzzles and vocabulary. She regretted not finishing college before getting married and starting work and a family, but she then slowly completed her college degree doing night classes and then eagerly went on to earn 2 master's degrees, one in special education and one in guidance and counseling, showing me by example that higher education was important. She was never flowery about her approval, but just expected that I would do well. I remember applying to medical school and calling home in delight and shock that I had gotten into Johns Hopkins Medical School right away, and she matter-of-factly said, "I knew you would." I didn't understand until the past few years how truly proud she was of us. We are all a product of our upbringing, and Mom's parents weren't very demonstrative and were sparse with their praise. But after Joe Katz came into her life and taught her about unconditional love at 80 years of age, I saw her change and soften and become quick to praise. She preached positivity, attitude of gratitude, and counted blessings instead of worries and aches and pains. She showed us it is never too late to learn and grow. I'm proud of her and of how she lived, especially her later years, but she is gone way too soon and will be sorely missed. I always thought that she would lend wisdom when my son Sam, who just got engaged, gets married and starts a family, that she would be there when I retire and transition to a new life and help me find meaning outside of medicine. We had only recently really started to have deeper talks that included feelings and revelations. She was supposed to live to 100, 12 more years. I'm grateful for what we had, but I still feel cheated. I can't help but think of Cat Stevens' song, "Cat in the Cradle," about how we all think we can put off quality time till later. "When you coming home, son? I don't know when, but we'll get together then, yeah. You know, we'll have a good time then." Another of those life lessons. So put aside differences. Grab the people you love and hug them tightly. Tell them how much they mean to you. Remember to thank them each day for the little things. And be quick to forgive. You may not have another chance to say, "I love you, you mean the world to me." Life is precious and we don't know how much time we have. It's always shorter than we think. Mom would want us to look on the bright side, like this quote from Dr. Seuss, "Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened." There's a Buddhist saying, "Everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that, and all will be well." I'm working on it. Beautiful words from Lisa. And now from one of Sheila's very precious grandchildren, all of the grandchildren, so precious. Yona, your daughter Genevieve wrote beautiful words. Peter too. Grandma Sheila always supported me and told me she was proud of my choices and the person I became. She attended my high school and college graduations and my wedding and was the first one of the family to welcome my husband John to the family when he became my significant other. Unlike other grandmothers I had met, my grandma was very interactive and was always interested when a child came up to talk with her. When I shared that we had lost her, friends from childhood who I'd nearly lost touch with reached out and shared how they too remembered her fondly. I don't have many pictures of her as I would have liked. Grandma Sheila preferred to be the woman holding the camera. We used to call her Grandma Camera when I was little. Her picture frames and photo albums and her photos and videos were how I remembered most of my childhood. She was the best kind of listener, somehow able to encourage verbally without talking over you. She was insightful and a great conversationalist. Her love of words and learning was inspiring, and we talked often about psychology and the science of how people learn and grow. She also enjoyed genealogy, and I loved her stories about our family members. She would always start with a, "Do you remember?" And then when I unfortunately admitted I did not remember meeting that person, she would explain how they were related to me and to her, and then share the anecdote that had made her think of that person during our conversation. I'm sure many of you in attendance here or virtually are those people, her family and friends, and Sheila cared about you all and enjoyed her connections with you so much. These last few years, it was harder to speak with her for very long because she would lose her voice quickly, and we didn't get to see each other as often. But I could hear the smile in her voice when she talked about something that she was passionate about. I'm sorry I didn't get to hear more of her stories, and I'm glad that I was able to talk with her as often as we did. Grandma Sheila, Sheila Bunin, thank you for being my grandmother. I love you, Jenna.
Sheila's son David, followed by her daughter Yona.
I'm standing here to eulogize my mother with a broken heart, because how can anyone ever be truly prepared for this? I'm standing here to eulogize my mother with a broken heart, because how can anyone ever be truly prepared for this? Mom was very special in my life, not only for being Mom, but for the way she taught me about the world and how to relate to it. Some of those teachings were applicable immediately, and others were useful throughout my entire life. I was still a boy when Mom began going back to college to get her degree and her teaching and began a counseling career. During that time, when she was studying psychology and philosophy, she shared her learning with me, discussing all the concepts and applications with me. I can tell you that it shaped my mind. She taught me not to accept things at face value, to examine all sides of an issue, to formulate logical hypotheses, to test them, and to adjust my view based on the facts. She exemplified explaining things clearly. Early on, this helped me greatly in my career in high tech. Now, a lifetime later, after I have been learning Torah and Gemara in particular for a number of years, much of my ability to understand the sugiyas and verbalize them with clarity, and also my teaching abilities, are due to Mom's influence on me. Mom was always involved with my life. At every turn, she was there. When I got married in Israel, and then when I had my own son, when we celebrated his bar mitzvah in our Orthodox community in Boston, Mom was there, proud and supporting. I thank Mom for finding the space to accept my family and our new way of life that we adopted, a Torah life. She never criticized our choice. She became part of our circle. We shared with her the unfolding story of the shidduch of our son and his kala, his bride, Rachel. We felt that Mom loved every part of it, even though it was so far from her experience. and she became the biggest fan of our new daughter-in-law and her growing gang of Mom's great-grandchildren. Mom forged a beautiful relationship with Rachel and her family, and until today, they are full of praise and thanks for a grandmother that had so much love and positive support to give. After Mom lost my father 22 years ago, she found the late love in Joe Katz. Mom first told us about him, and then we met him. Joe was the most loving and supporting friend we could have wished for Mom, and he won our hearts. I feel blessed in being able to have visited Mom 3 times in the last 8 months. In April, we flew in from Chicago, staying at a nearby hotel, and we had a beautiful visit with Mom. In June, we came driving from Chicago with her grandson and 3 of her great-grandchildren. And Mom was having tremendous nachas playing and communicating with Shendel Tema, who is 6, and Yitzchak Asher, who is 8, and especially getting a big hug and kiss from Menachem Nachum, then aged 3.5, who she was meeting for the first time because of the fortunate years of Corona. In our last visit in December, we came at Mom's request for 3 days, coming daily only for a couple of hours because that was the longest she could stretch before she became exhausted. This last visit was after Mom had lost Joe, and from the little she said about it, we could understand how hard this loss was for her. It was also important to her that the family stay connected, even though we have all ended up in different places. I want to thank Yona for everything she has done for Mom. She was always there when needed, arranging all the treatments and taking care of all her needs. This is the right opportunity to ask for mechila, for forgiveness from Mom, for living so far from you and not being able to visit you more often over the years, and even not being able to call you every time you and I wanted to talk to each other because of the time difference. Please forgive me if I hurt you or disappointed you in any way. May you be a melitz yosher for me and for your entire family. We hope to assist in the aliyah of her neshama, raising the level of her soul, through our performance of mitzvahs and learning in her name. May her name be a memory and a blessing for us and for Klal Yisrael.
Hi, I'm Yona, Sheila's 3rd child. Mom had a special relationship with each of her children. She loved us all very much and accepted who we were without trying to change us. Not really a little. She was a person who always saw the potential and positive in ourselves. She encouraged all of us to be the best versions of ourselves. Education and learning was very important to her. Growing up, I watched and learned from her. She took one college class after another, earning her associate's degree from Rockland Community College, then her bachelor's in psychology from St. Thomas, culminating in 2 master's degrees from Montclair State College. I remembered she had to take yet another statistics class for each degree, and I helped her with the coursework. Maybe that's why I majored in mathematics. She loved teaching in the summer school in Nyack, where she became the intake coordinator. Her room was a refuge for those who needed a place to be accepted. It wasn't easy for Mom, working full-time while having a demanding family. But when I was a child, she was always there for me when I needed her, even if I had to follow her around the house to talk. Later, she was only a phone call away, giving me wise counsel and encouragement. In her spare time, she and my dad taught a weekly folk dancing class, and she started taking pictures. She channeled her artistry through the lens, and she was very proud of her photography, capturing the special moments of gatherings and celebrations. She loved all her grandchildren. Since my girls were born, she always took an interest in their lives, especially in the arts and sciences, supporting them in their various activities. She always encouraged creativity and was so proud of all their accomplishments. Mom once told me that life is too short to do things that didn't bring joy to yourself and others. She encouraged me and those around her to find our passion in our lives, especially when it enriched the world. She preferred to focus on the positive and surrounded herself with interesting, creative, and talented people. Many of you here today and in the virtual world. Sheila believed in the good in all people, seeing the positive in every situation, and that every closing of a door meant that a window somewhere was opening onto a bright new future filled with possibilities. Sheila's open heart led her to find unconditional love at the young age of 80. Joe Katz was truly the love of her life. They spent their last 8 years on this plane together in love, laughter, and bliss. Mom excelled in being a caregiver for her beloved mother-in-law, Dorothy, her best friend, Estelle, and others. I had a great example of how to do it well when she needed me, and I took over caring for Mom. I will miss our daily calls and frequent visits. Mom used to say I was her gift from God, being the surprise third child. But I think she was a gift to all of us. I love you, Mom.
I have a favorite Talmudic teaching. It's about Ish Kasher, which I have turned into Isha Kshara on behalf of Sheila. The teaching is that when an Ish Kasher, which I guess is literally translated as a kosher man or a kosher woman, but we understand it as a very appropriate or fitting person, that when that kind of person dies, the tears of all those mourning her are so precious to God that God counts each tear and places it in a treasure house to remember that divine human being. And the rabbis ask, why does it say kasher instead of chashuv, important, or gadol, as in great? And the understanding is that a person like Sheila, Isha Kashara, is a person of integrity, of purity, of goodness, one who lives in the true spirit of Judaism. That person has a connection with family, with community, a reverence for God and for the world that God created. When I think about all these definitions of Isha Kashara, I come to the word with which her rabbis always described her. Chen, gracious, so lovely and gracious. And I wish that I, like her family, could give you a really important story to hold on to, but the truth is 88 years of life is too much to try to capture in words. And so I would like to follow in my friend Sheila Bunin's footsteps and provide you with a few photographs of her life. I only knew her for 20 of her 88 years. But in the first picture I hold up to you, she is dancing at one of the first Yom HaAtzmaut Israel Independence Day celebrations in which I participated at OJC. On one side of her is her dear, darling friend, Eileen, who is here, and on the other, Judy Cohen. And with Sheila's energy, she is leading them in dancing with the teenagers, with the youngsters. Sheila is leading the dancing to celebrate the state of Israel. And while I'm talking about her friends, in another picture very precious to me, we heard the name of Estelle. Her friend, her older sister, her somewhat of a mother replacement. And they were darling friends in the conclusion of Estelle's life when she lived at the Esplanade. I have a picture in my mind when we brought our Tuesday morning minyan to the Esplanade, something that Sheila was not part of. She made her choices what she did and didn't do. We brought the minyan to the Esplanade, and Sheila came. I have a picture of her sitting next to Estelle and those famous hands dancing as we sang Elohai Neshama, the purity of the soul. Another picture I have, and I know that Rabbi Sheff carries the same exact picture, is sitting quietly with Sheila in one of our offices, and Sheila showing in those quiet moments her vulnerability, her realness, who she really was, what she was concerned about, and what she loved. There was an intimacy that she created not only with her rabbis, but maybe in a different level of spirituality with us. Sheila's true interest and curiosity about our lives extended to our spouses, our children, and everything that we as rabbis felt. And my final picture is one that so many of her friends here from OJC can have in the picture. Someone said, "Oh, who is Sheila Bunin?" And all we'd have to say is, that beautiful woman with a smile on her face and the gorgeous white hair sitting in the front right, 5 rows about from the back, moving in music. And everyone would say, "Oh," with a big smile, "that is our Sheila." And so when I go back to these ideas of Isha Kashara, dedicated to family and community, I want to start with family. We welcomed to our virtual moment here Audrey and Artie, and we know that you're listening with beloved cousins Ivy and Jeffrey and Amy. Sheila was able to grow and change through her life. That is clear. And perhaps sisters who had a bit of competitive streak as children grew up and became best friends. What a gift it was to the whole extended family that Audrey and Sheila were close physically and close spiritually, emotionally, that this family had that time, Audrey and Artie, with your family. And Herb, her husband, Sheila was just a baby when she fell in love with him in high school and married him right out of high school. Falling in love, yes, with him, but probably because of his mother. I believe that too. Anyone who ever heard Sheila talk about her mother-in-law knows that it was a good reason to marry Herb, to be close to her. Her role models all her life until very late age. Her mother, her mother-in-law, who she continued to speak of and even to cry about after all these years, to miss their influence in her world. Sheila grew, said her daughter Yona yesterday, and she insisted that their dad Herb grew along with her. And then in the family, Sheila as a mother. Of course, Sheila was 4 mothers. Each of you had a different mother. But with all of you, as everyone has said, she encouraged growth, curiosity, to follow along with her for whatever time you had so that you could have private time with her. She was indeed a mixture both of a practical, pragmatic Sheila, I knew you would get into medical school, and also what her family lovingly calls superlative Sheila. You're amazing, you're fantastic, you're wonderful. Well, I was also one of the beneficiaries, as probably many of you were as well. She read aloud to you. She came home for lunch every day when Yona needed her in middle school. And as you grew into adults, your friendship blossomed into something intimate, something important and valuable. And as a friend from the outside, Rabbi Sheff and I were talking about the way Sheila didn't just preach, but lived non-judgment, acceptance of all her children and all her grandchildren. And so we come to Grandma Camera. For her 7 grandchildren, she was always curious about your lives. She loved to think that she could be a role model of empowerment for her granddaughters-in-law, and for her grandsons as well. Her cards, reading books. I understand she gave you IQ tests for fun. I'm not going to make a judgment about that. Here is what I know. Each of you, each member of her family was respected and cherished as adults. There was acceptance and gratitude for her relationships with Audrey and Artie, David and Rena, Lisa and David, Yona and Peter, Alana and Michael, for Simcha and Rachel, 6 great-grandchildren with one on the way, B'metz Hashem, Sam and his fiancée Clementine, and I know, because in Jewish tradition it is so, Sam, she'll be there with both of you at your wedding. She'll be under the chuppah. Everyone is invited to a simcha. With Genevieve and John, with Rose, Jacob, Ethan, Smitha. What a wedding. She loved your wedding. Had such a great time. Lydia and Ryan. There's just no doubt that you were her whole world. And I personally want to say a few words to Yona. You know, you had support from your siblings, from your husband, from your children. It is true. But pain and sorrow can challenge our faith. And the courage to persevere in the face of adversity, for me, is nothing short than a miracle. As long as there is compassion in the human heart, which you embody, the will to act on a virtue that is both human and godly, there is reason for all of us to believe. So, Yona, thank you for what you did, not only for your mother, but for your siblings and for all of us, because you did it without any strings attached. So here's what I know. Sheila loved life. She loved the sunlight in her bedroom in the morning. She loved being relevant into her late 80s, knowing what was going on, talking about pronouns and gender fluidity and Black Lives Matter. She loved all of it. She loved dancing. She loved traveling with Joe. She loved laughter. Her life force was palpable. It was a magnet. It's why when we saw her and Joe fall in love, we all fell a little bit in love too. We could feel it in ourselves. But when she lost her energy, when she lost that joie de vivre, and when she lost Joe, she was, as Alana wisely said yesterday, at peace and ready to go. She wanted to go. And so when Yona stepped out just for a few moments and was on the phone with Alana, Joe snuck into that hospital room and grabbed her by the hand and said, "Come on, beautiful, let's go." Psalm 61, Miksei ha'aretz elecha ekra, ba'atof libi b'tzur yarum mimeni b'tancheni. From the end of the earth I call to you. When my heart is faint, you lead me to a rock that is high above me. I'm going to chant Eloah Slichot today. It's Friday. We're moving towards Shabbat, and the memorial prayer is softened a bit as we look towards Shabbat. After the memorial prayer, the pallbearers will come forward, and we will begin the process of levaya, of accompanying our mit, our beautiful Sheila, to her final resting place. Please rise. Eloah slichot, chanun v'rachum, erech apayim v'rav chesed, hamsei chaparat fesha, v'hakravat yesha menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, b'mahalot kedoshim, utehorim kezohar akiya mazhirim et nishmat Sima bat Avram v'Rivka shehalacha le'olama. Ana bal harachamim זוכרה לה לטובה כל זכויותיה וצדקותיה בארצות החיים, ובטח לה שערי צדק ואורה, שערי חמלה וחנינה, בסתר כנפיך הסתיריה לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen. Eloah Slichot, God of forgiveness, you who are gracious and compassionate, patient and abundantly kind, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Sima bat Avram Verivka, our Sheila Bunin, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that you remember all the worthy and righteous deeds she performed. May our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Pallbearers.
Folks, just give us one moment. We're going to turn the casket, okay? We'll have the family pallbearers come forward. Family pallbearers on each side, please.
You left hand here, you right hand here.